Hi, I'm Sophia Louisa Lee. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of So Zoom In. Please hit like and subscribe. I greatly appreciate it. I love bringing you people who are in the creative flow. Today, I'll be speaking with Annette Larson. She is the founder and filmmaker of Magic Channel Productions in Seattle. She has a lot going on, and I look forward to speaking with her. So thank you so much for joining us. Annette Larson, I'm so happy to have you on my show, So Zoom In. Thank you so very much for joining me. I'm a huge fan of yours because you approach filmmaking with higher consciousness. And not many filmmakers or artists do that. They may do it subconsciously, but you do it with intent. And I think doing something with intention brings a whole new element to it. It really, I feel, really elevates what you're doing. And so
thank you.
I wanted to ask you, what inspired you to get into filmmaking?
Well, I have always had a love for film and photography. What inspired me was that consciousness idea of helping other people down their journey, their life's journey, and giving tools to navigate the difficulties of our emotional journey, our life's journey, finding meaning and purpose. And so first and foremost for me is that idea of helping people and also learning and growing myself. And then second came the film, and film is just such a great way to bring ideas to people. And my film brings a lot of those topics to light, but it brings it along with a narrative storyline of a teenage girl who's also a seeker. And so the ideas that come through the interviews of the film are then put to practice to her in her life. And so the viewer can see how someone very new to these concepts of emotional awareness and mindfulness, that she can put those to practice in her life. And that was part of the journey.
A lot of people won't necessarily know what a seeker is. Would you like to share what that means?
It is, a lot of these terms are pretty generic and not really, they're used in so many different ways, just like the word spirituality or mindfulness and awareness are used in such different ways, and some can be triggering to some people. So when I talk about a seeker, I mean someone that's kind of constantly questioning, like, why are we here? What is my purpose? What is the meaning? And looking at all areas from science to philosophy to religions and seeking within. To me, it's about going within. And that involves a lot of work of unearthing what are your beliefs, your fears, and your traumas that you need to work through. And so psychology comes into play in a lot of ways. So that is how I would define a seeker.
So I think these past few years, 2019 forward, has really given us an opportunity to really go within. So is that when you started your film? Was it during the 2019, 2020? What word do I want to say? I don't want, okay, you know what, I'm just going to say it. When the shutdown happened and went to go within, is that when you started your story, or?
Well, ironically, I started it in 2019. And it was the beginning of 2019 where the idea literally came almost from nowhere. Of course, the concepts and the interviews with the women and those concepts of the film are something that I've been working with for a long, long time. But the actual storyline and the idea for the film really came almost like a download. It just came in really quickly. And I know creatives will understand that, like, you just have to write it on paper. You just have to get it down. And so then that was when I had already been writing screenplays as a hobby. So I had, over the past 2 years, written 2 screenplays just for myself. They didn't go anywhere, but this one came in and I started writing it down. And then I thought, well, maybe since I've been studying screenplays, I should take a filmmaking class just for fun. And so I did that. And then I bought a camera, and I thought, well, let's practice a few scenes. And when I had written the screenplay, I had always envisioned a teenage girl for the protagonist. And it just so happened I have a niece that was 16 at the time. And I just kept her, she was the vision in my head. And so I asked her, would you be interested in doing some experimental filming with me? I just got a camera and fresh off this little filmmaking class. Will you practice with me and let's do a few of the scenes that I've written for this new film? And she agreed to that. And so we just started really as an experiment and for me to practice. And then it really took on a life of its own. And it took 3 years to complete, actually a little over 3 years. And so, yes, filming, fortunately, the majority, about 75% of the filming was done in 2019, but there were still some scenes left to film. So yes, right through the pandemic was some more filming and editing and all post-production. So yes, it definitely took a turn right through the pandemic, and then it ended up being finished now, right kind of when the pandemic was over. And I think that was maybe part of the plan, that it was introduced after we've gone through all this. And so people have a chance to look at perspective and reflect and not be in, I know a lot of people are still in crisis mode, but not be in the deep crisis that we were in the beginning. So now we could kind of look at it from with a little more perspective.
Oh, that's great. I really like that. So when you were so you just had this passion that you knew you had to learn and you knew you had to do this project. How did you come up with the title, The Third Path?
Yeah, so I've always thought that there are so many different tools and modalities, and you go into a bookstore and you've got, the aisles of self-help, and then you've got philosophy, Eastern philosophy and religion, and then you've got science, and not all of them agree with each other. So the third path, I thought, was taking the best of science and the best of religion, the love-based concepts of religion, and bringing those together as the third path. Most people think finding a path to finding the meaning of life is either down the science road or the religion road. And I see a way to marry the two and bring the best of both of them.
I agree with that so much. I feel that's what it is. It is both. It's never just one or the other, because we're in this 3D reality that is both. So I'm so excited. I love that. I love that you're able to share that. Do you think if someone, okay, first of all, where can people see your film right now? Is it still on Filmocracy?
Yes, last I looked, it was still available for rent on Filmocracy, which was born from the wonderful Ethos Film Festival, where my film, The Third Path, was an official selection. And so it's still part of that. You go on to Filmocracy and go to the Ethos Film Fest. That's where you'll find it.
Okay. And so I know there's always a story to making a film. It always comes from somewhere. And I like to believe it always comes from within your heart. It's like something you just have to do. No matter what the circumstance, whether you have the money or not, you're going to make it happen. That is a sign to me, the true filmmaker. What got you to that point where you just knew you had to do it, where you had to make this film?
Well, it's a bit of a long story, but whenever I tell people the story of the film, they always tell me that my personal story and journey through making it was the real story. The film wasn't the real story. So I'll try to share a little bit about that journey, because I think it could probably inform a lot of other people on their journey as well. So I've been practicing what I call radical trust for several years. And what I mean by that, there's many books on it out there. Like Michael Singer has written a book called The Surrender Experiment. And what it is simply just living by the direction of your inner voice. And some people will call it a divine guidance, or the guidance of your soul or your heart, or guidance from God, or just from your higher intelligence. And so whatever you want to call it, there's that voice that we all have that is not the one up here, because this is the one that is not the one you want to listen to. It's your heart, your soul, but that voice is very quiet. So in order to hear that voice, you have to get very still. And not many of us do that, if at all. So this voice up here is the one that never shuts up, and it's so loud that we never hear anything else. So through my practices of mindfulness and awareness and all these studies, I have learned to start to listen to that voice. Now, some people may be born with that ability, but for me, it took a really long time to get there. So I started listening to that voice, and one of the first experiments I tried with just listening to this kind of radical trust was when I really felt that I was needed to leave the job I was in. This was several years ago. The job was causing me physical stress, and actually I was starting to not feel well. And it just was like, no, it's time to leave. But I did not have a job lined up. I had just a little connection to perhaps a new job. So I did quit that job. The next day, the boss that happened to be my new job called me and said, "Hey, I'm looking for someone. I'm in the wine business." And so that job ended up being the best job I've ever had in my entire career. So I'm like, wow, this kind of works. You know, that's the golden rule. You never quit a job without having another one lined up. And I just took the leap. Wow. So I started trying to live in that way. And so how the film came about was, the universe didn't say, or my higher guidance didn't say, you're going to go make a film now. Like, are you kidding me? I'm not a filmmaker. I did not go to film school. This is not, my trade. I don't work in the industry. That's a simply crazy idea. So what it did say, though, was go take that filmmaking class and go experiment with your niece Ava on filming. And then, the script downloaded. And then, so that was in July, we did some filming with my niece. And by the way, she's in Minnesota, so not really easy to coordinate all this. So we had a trip planned for her to come out to Seattle. I'm Seattle based, in August. And after July, I said, would you like to film some more? She said yes. So I had to, now plan for more scenes and now get some actors. And so we filmed, ended up being like 2 72-hour film marathons. Wow. In July and August. And at that point, we had about 30% of the film done. And then at that point, I'm like, I don't want to just keep doing this as a hobby. If we're going to do this thing, let's commit to doing it. So we decided to commit. And from there, it was like everything had to unfold magically and miraculously for me to create a feature-length film from that. And so that whole thing was that guidance of that little step-by-step. Okay, I can see now that the intention was you're going to make a film, but if I would have been told that from the outset, I would have never believed it or never done it. So that's kind of how I got roped in, literally listening to that voice. Sometimes it's literally just day to day, like, what am I supposed to do today? And when we started, then we committed. That meant I had to find time for this junior in high school in Minnesota, for me to go there, for her to come here during the school year and finish filming. So we had 2 more shoots that were kind of, again, like 72-hour sessions that were, extremely stressful to try to fit everything into that time. Meanwhile, my lead actor is aging. So we can't just like put this off for a year because she's going to look very different in a year. So,
Especially at age, right? Yeah.
yeah.
Wow.
So it was really that guidance. And from there, it just was a super wild ride. And I cannot say that it was actually even enjoyable. It was the most stressful thing I've ever done. I actually have like PTSD just thinking about it. It was kind of making a film by myself. I really didn't have a lot of help for a majority of the film. I had, my husband or my brother or a friend holding the boom, but no one else knew anything about filmmaking. So I really had to learn it all on my own and be the one to make all the decisions.
Is that what made it
was
stressful? Was making all the decisions yourself and not really knowing for sure what was right or wrong, or what made it the most stressful for you?
Just working on such a tight time frame while also working my full-time job
Right.
and not knowing what I was doing really.
Mhm.
I studied lighting and sound and everything online and learned a little bit from that film class, but being very vulnerable of just feeling like I don't know what I'm doing, yet I'm taking on this enormous project in itself was the hugest example of radical trust. And I'm spending money, of my own personal funds. And, at times I could see my husband going like, what are you doing? This is a little more than a hobby. Like, so it was a complete leap, literally hundreds and hundreds of hours to
Right.
complete this. And really, I had to tell people, they're like, oh, this is your passion and your dream, and so great you're doing this. And I'm kind of like, well, actually, it was never my dream or my passion. I've just been directed to do this, and I don't know where it's going. I have no idea if anyone will even see it, if it will even become a film that's viewable. All of that, I had no idea where it was going. I just had to move one foot in front of the other.
So now that it's done, what have you taken from this experience? Is this something you want to continue doing, or is this something that you want to go in a completely different direction now?
Well, that is also interesting because I found that when you start taking this path and just trusting what to do next, sometimes you aren't given a vision of the future. Like, I haven't been given a big vision like, okay, now I feel like I want to be a filmmaker or a writer or this or that. And now I have my vision for the next 10 years. I really haven't been given that. So I'm still kind of taking these baby steps and following the crumbs of where I'm led. And what I do know is that I do want to continue to bring people as much information for their own healing journey and to help people. I mean, we are in a mental health crisis. We all know that. I mean, suicide rates have never been so high. Anxiety and depression are off the charts. And I feel like we are at a real point in humanity where we really need to find the tools for our unique own individual journey that is going to bring us to a place where we can at least feel some peace and some meaning and purpose and help us navigate these emotional waters that are super tumultuous and rocky. And that's where I'd like to focus my attention. Now, whether that means making another film or doing more with this film, which I'd love to actually take the third path and have it professionally produced. All my actors and my experts were volunteers. I made it all from my own funds. I produced, directed, and wrote the whole thing. And would I love to have a higher production value? and have it done professionally. I think that either that or a similar concept would definitely work, because I know that it works. I know that people have been deeply touched by the film and the messages. So I think there's more for that down the road. But again, I just haven't been given a clear path of where to step next.
Well, I think that's so beautiful, because it's not an easy task to make a movie, especially a full-length feature. It does take so much time, and so many people are involved. You have to have people be part of the process. It really isn't something you can just do by yourself, no matter what it is.
Exactly.
And so you did that. You made that happen, and you stuck with it. And I find that so admirable and so inspiring, because so many people, they start something and they don't finish it. They find something else to do, or they find an excuse not to do it. And you trusted yourself to see it all the way through. And I admire that so much, because, especially when you're working together for a long period of time, people get cranky, or they have one idea that goes way off in a completely different direction. And you have to rein them back in to get your vision completed. And you did that. And I love that so much. And I'm so proud of you. And just the fact that you took the time to listen to your higher self, or that part of you that said, okay, Annette, you're going to do this. And you did that. And I think that in itself is healing. If more people took that time to just calm this monkey mind and listen to what's in here and what's, the higher source is saying, I think that could really shift so many people. And you did that by example.
Yeah, well, and I'll tell you that the monkey mind, the ego, whatever you want to call it, every single day was, I don't think a day passed during this whole process where my mind wasn't saying, what are you doing? This is stupid. You have no right to make a film. You're not a filmmaker. How do you think you can make much, a short film, much less a feature-length film? You should quit. You're spending too much money. All those things. Literally every single day, I had to push that aside, and just think of what we listen to every day. That voice telling us how we can't do things, or how you're stupid, or you're going to fail that test, or you can't get that job, or you're not good enough for that. And we listen to that. So it was really funny that it was not until this spring, when I had a cast party screening and then a friends and family screening. The cast party, there were some technical glitches and I was just out of sorts, and I was watching it and I'm like, oh, I'm thinking about the bad part, things that I would have changed. It wasn't until that second screening where I sat there and my ego mind finally said, hey, wow, this is pretty good. This is pretty amazing. I can't believe you did this. It wasn't until 3.5 years, over 3 years later, that the mind finally said, hey, this is good. So we listen to this every day. The other piece that's amazing when you start, if you do decide to really jump into this radical trust journey, is that the miracles, the synchronicities, I think it's just fun to call them miracles, whatever, if you don't want to call them a miracle, but to me, there were miracles that happened. And to think of what needed to happen from that time, I decided, okay, we have 30% of this film done. We're going to go for it now. And we have two more 72-hour blocks to film, 75% of this. The amount of magic that needed to happen to arrange all these people, for example, and unpaid actors, unpaid volunteers to be interviewed, for someone sometimes strangers, sometimes I didn't even know them, and things would happen literally at the last second. Like there were 2 times where the mic was not working and it was dead, and unplug, try all the different things. Finally, literally minutes before we had to start, it worked. And things like that happened all the time. I wanted to find a professor, ideally a quantum mechanics, quantum physics professor, to be my science expert in the film. And I was calling up strangers, people, asking everyone I knew. And finally, at the literally getting down to the wire, I was with my hairstylist. And I'm like, yeah, I'm really looking for a professor. And she goes, oh, I have a client that's an astronomy professor. And sure enough, I called her up, out of the blue, and she's like, oh yeah, I'll do it. And that's how some of the experts came to me. The weather, I had to, Seattle weather in the fall can be pretty gnarly. And so I had my longest day, about 12, 14-hour day of filming. I had to film outside for a couple scenes. It was pouring rain the entire day, just a nasty, stormy day. Sure enough, right when it needed to stop raining, it stopped raining, and we could film those crucial scenes outside. And also on that day, just little things that were funny was, so my niece Ava was here in Seattle. We were starting the morning out on our first location, and I had my car full of equipment, and of course I was the caterer too. I was everything. So I had all this food for lunch, and we pulled up we're filming at a middle school, and it's pouring rain, and I opened the back door, and like in slow motion, I could see my trays of sandwiches that I had for lunch just, falling out of the car onto the pavement, splat. Of course the lids flew off. So half of my lunch was there on the pavement in pouring rain. And my stepdaughters were coming to help that day. And I'm panicking. Okay, how can I get lunch? I don't have time to go get lunch. And so I called them, and they're like, oh, well, actually, we were just stopping at Costco. We can go get those sandwiches for you. Oh, nice. On their way. So it happened right at the minute when they were going to Costco, and they could get the sandwiches. So just crazy stuff like that. Yeah, another time we were literally filming in Minnesota in a blizzard during Thanksgiving, a blizzard. And we had to go film the last interview. And we get to the space, and there's windows. And my film is set in May. And we cannot have a blizzard going on outside. And miraculously, we shot it. And when I looked at the scene, I'm like, oh, you can't tell through the windows that it's a blizzard outside. And so that really saved that whole scene.
Oh, wow. That's great. But I was thinking, what a great inspiration you are to your family too. Your stepdaughters, your niece, know that these young women had a chance to see you taking charge and making it happen based on an idea you had. And that is so inspiring. That's such a great thing for these young women to see. It's like, okay, yeah, I can do this. And you did it.
Yeah, that was actually one of the things that kept me going. Was my niece my niece Ava and I, we're very similar. It's almost like people often say, oh, is that your daughter? We look alike. We have a lot of similarities. One thing that is in common with us is we often have big ideas, and she's kind of entrepreneurial, but often, as you know, very difficult to follow through on big ideas. And this was one where probably my biggest idea ever. And she is also one that will often quit. And of course, teenagers, that's what they do, right? But I just thought, when the probably a million times I wanted to quit, that was one of the things that kept me going, is I need to model not quitting. When things get super hard, I need to model this for her so she can see that, yes, you can make it through things that are really challenging and really tough. So
Right.
that's something that kept me going too.
Good. And it came, and I love that it came to you in small bites. It didn't come to you as one big bite, it just started with you trusting what,
Yeah,
and it sounds easy, but it's so hard.
it's so hard. Yeah.
What do
Because some of the that you're asked to do are crazy. I mean, this was a crazy idea that, how do you follow things that are crazy? But once we committed after that August shoot, it was so sure inside of me. Of course, the mind was every day again saying, stop, this is stupid. But everything in my body just said, keep going. And at that point, really, I just kind of created a mantra, a daily mantra for myself. And it was as simple as I have two choices. Either I can try or I can quit. It wasn't either I can make a film or I can quit. It was either I can try. And that was as simple. It's like, okay, I'm going to keep trying. And it was sometimes I got to the point where, between those shoots, when I had to arrange all these interviews and these locations and everything, that I was so overwhelmed that literally I got to the point where I was like, today, what can I accomplish today? And that's how I found often it works. It's just literally breaking it down to today. What can I do today? And then you don't get caught up in, well, where is this going? And why am I doing this? And where is this leading? Is this my new career? And the ego loves to get caught up in things like, especially, in the film world too, is like, well, how many people are going to see this? Or, is there going to be fame or money or any of these things? But that's all a trapping. And, I haven't made a dollar yet on it, but what has come from it is a richness, and the people that were involved were, many of them, deeply impacted by just being a part of it and different ways that it helped them. And so you just never know who might be touched, or what you're putting out in the world that could just send out an energy to the world that could help others or inspire others. And so you do have to just catch yourself, your ego constantly tricking you into kind of figure out what's happening and figure out what you're supposed to do.
Well, so you finished the project, which is incredible. And then you have submitted it, and it won awards. And so that's also trusting, taking what you did and then, putting it out there to see what kind of, feedback you get. And you've received a very positive welcoming with your work, so you are a filmmaker.
Right. That's the other thing. The ego said, like, oh, you can't call yourself a filmmaker. So I've had to catch myself, like, okay, no, I did make a film. That makes me a filmmaker. And I did study a lot. I did hundreds of hours of self-study, and just, some of the classes and screenwriting class I took. But, there are the years before that, writing screenplays and the hundreds of hours I spent on that. So, it's not like it just came out of nowhere. You have to give yourself credit. No, did I not go to film school? No, I did not. But this was quite a schooling.
So now that this is done, and what does the new year look like for you? Is this something that you would like to continue doing, or do you want to just kind of wait and see, or what are you feeling?
Well, one direction that I have many more film festivals that I've submitted to. So that will continue throughout next year. Really, it just started this past fall. Really, October was really the first film festival I submitted for. So going through the next year. So far, it's been an official selection for 5. So that's I think 5 out of 10 so far. So I'd say that's pretty good. And so I'm going to follow that. I'm really loving meeting other creatives. The Ethos Film Awards was just an amazing experience to meet other creatives, people that are making films that are changing the world. They want to change the world. That's where I feel like those are my people that I love being around and love talking to. And so I would love the opportunity to interact with more people that are making purpose-driven films. And would I love to be involved in a project that has similar themes to the third path? Absolutely. And would I love to have this or another version of it produced professionally, of course. But there's also this thing about the radical trust of following what you've been instructed from your higher guidance. Is there's always this time where I'm asked to do nothing and to simply rest. And those are the most difficult times because we are not taught, especially in our society, to do nothing. That means you are being lazy, unproductive, nothing's happening, you can't see any fruits of your labor. But I've found now from experience that just like nature in the winter, the leaves go off the trees, they go quiet, but what's happening underneath the soil is a lot. There's a lot of, seeds germinating for the spring. There's a lot happening underneath in that stillness. And so I think it's good for us to remember as humans that we also need that winter time to go inward, to rest, to plant the seeds for the next spring and summer of activity. And that is actually what had happened for literally nearly 5 months before the third path idea came to me. I was at a complete standstill creatively. The thought of writing was actually almost repulsive. I was just, wait, what's happening? All of a sudden I was on this roll and writing, and now nothing. So I just was forced to listen to that and just almost, do nothing. So I've been called to do that for the month of December. Ironically, or not so, I would say that it happens to be the winter time and the solstice. Mm-hmm. So I have chosen to follow that guidance of taking some deep rest. And I feel that what's happening, our seeds are being planted for things to happen next year. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. I'm taking a little rest, a little breather from the crazy activity of really the last 6 months have been 8 months of this year have been just extremely active, from the film completing to then marketing to doing my private screenings to the film festivals. Creating everything around the marketing of your film is a lot of work. Yeah. And I'm kind of waiting for direction. I wish I had a better answer, Sophia. I feel like there should be a better answer. Well, yes, my 5-year plan is this, and my 10-year plan is this. And
that's beautiful to give yourself the time to rest, because you are leaving space open for something to come. Some people, when they're so overpacked and jammed, they're not leaving room for anything to come in.
Yes.
I think that's great that you're doing that, and how perfect to be doing that, at this time.
Yes.
And again, that's inspiring for other people to see. It's like, you don't have to jam pack everything in. You can breathe and just allow,
and because when you're so busy, you often can't hear that voice, the voice of your heart or your soul, and how it's directing you. And so when I was in extreme activity and busyness, I could tell that I was kind of sometimes forcing things because I'd have to make decisions quick, and I didn't really have the time. We don't always have the time to be able to get still and go inward and really listen. And as you fine tune that listening skill, you can, the listening is easier, but I'm still learning. So
We
it
all
takes
do.
me more stillness to really listen to the voice. And the voice started screaming at me, stop, slow down. And, usually, if you don't stop or slow down, something happens, like you get an illness and then you're forced to rest, or an injury or something. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. I listened to the voice before it forced me to slow down.
Good. Good. Well, I am so proud of you. I I know we haven't really had a chance to get to know each other, but just from what I know of you and what you have done and what you have chosen to continue to do, I find that so inspiring. And I know so many other people will as well. So I'm glad you're doing this, and I'm glad you're on this path. And thank you so much for sharing the story. And okay, so I will share the link to Filmocracy. Is it also on your website?
Absolutely. The trailer, so magicchannelproductions.com, or actually the thirdpathfilm.com leads you to the website, and the links for about the film and the trailer.
Would it be okay with you if I put the trailer as part of this video? Could I get a little movie?
Yeah.
File? That'd be great. That'd be kind of cool. All right, I will do that. Well, I wish you blessings for 2023. Make great things happen. I hope to see you in person sooner than later.
Yeah.
You're in the creative flow, my dear. You are doing. You're doing. Even when you're not doing, you're doing.
Right, exactly. Even when we're not, things are happening. Right.
Well, thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Sophia. It's been a pleasure. I just love the energy you bring, and your awareness, and what you're doing with your podcast is amazing. So I'm really very honored to be here.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, I hope we can speak again soon. And if you're open to it, I mean, I would like to start talking more about higher consciousness, because a lot of people don't quite understand what that means and how that can really help your creativity, whether no matter what that creativity is. And that goes with listening to your higher self, or the variety of names you call it. But and I'll probably edit this part out, but I really feel like we're going into an ascension. That we've been in this process for a while, and I think people are having a really hard time fighting with themselves. And you talked about the depression and suicide rate and that whole thing, but to really let them know this is all part of learning about yourself, and having that soul expansion, letting stuff come to you, listening, trusting. Letting things transmute, so you're not holding on to stuff, but allowing that to, become something lighter. Because I feel you can never really get rid of something. Transmit it, or transmit it back up. So that it is lighter, and that you gain a different perspective and hopefully wisdom because of whatever has happened. And I feel there's just so much that people want to know about, but they start thinking, oh, that's woo-woo, or oh, that's crazy, but it's actually there. And I think through art and film, it's a great opportunity to really let people know that there are always different paths, third path, different modalities, or different, just different ways of thinking. And I'd really like to start incorporating more of that. And I would love to talk with you more about it. That's what you're doing.
That is what I'm doing. That's really first and foremost. The filmmaking the second. That the film is a delivery agent for those messages that I feel are just like, for me, it's so transformational. My life is completely transformed because of these studies and what I've done. And I feel like I'm living with actually much more control of my life, because before, life would happen to me. I feel like life happened to me, and now life happens through me. And that's a whole different way of living than just being, out in the storm without any grounding or any tools. And now I have a huge toolkit to draw from And it just gives you so much more sense of control of your life and peace and being able to work through the most traumatic moments.
Right. And
Yeah.
you're doing
I'd love to talk more about that with you. I love that is my true passion, if I were to say one. Yes.
Good. Because I think it's time now for people to really start. I think people want to listen.
They want to heal. Yes.
So yeah, maybe. So if you would like, let's do this again and talk.
I would love that. Yeah.
Especially as we're going through winter, it's the time to really go within and really allow things, to cultivate, even if it's just thoughts or how to not be so hard on yourself, or to be present, and that's so hard for so many people, just to be present, because you're always thinking.
And there's just so many tools now, and now that science is, some scientists wouldn't say this, but I really feel like science and spirituality are becoming intertwined, and so much of what's happening in science is bringing us to we have scientific proof of some of these things that used to be called, crazy or woo-woo or whatever. And I feel like there's something now for everyone. You don't have to just go be a Buddhist monk or, subscribe to a religion. I just feel like there are we don't have a lot of answers from just religion sometimes. I just find that and it's such a trigger for most people, their religion. So I just feel like there's so many tools for us that don't involve, really believing in a certain God or practice.
Oh, I totally agree. It's so funny. I was thinking about this just a couple days ago. During the holidays, so many people feel lonely, or they feel alone, and I thought, wow, what a 3D concept, because when you allow yourself to be present and you kind of plug into the universe, there's everything there. It's like you're so connected. There's you can't feel lonely or alone, because you're part of the whole. It's such an incredible feeling when you're experiencing that. So, and we could all, when we all feel that way, and I think it all starts with just being present and allowing to rest, to take a moment to whether it's meditation or just taking the moments of deep breathing, or not scheduling anything for the day and just being, you allow all that to come in, and it's just you're part of this amazing force, and that's when all this creativity comes in.
Right.
And you're like, oh yeah, and I can start doing this, and before you know it, you're crazy busy, and then you have to okay, now I'm doing and it's just so fascinating how that happens. Anyway, I think it's, and I just think now is the time. I think people want to hear it. They need to hear it. And I think there's a reason why we connected. And first of all, I want people to go see your film, The Third Path. And I love that you're in Seattle, because you're seeing a whole different perspective and able to share that. And I really look forward to sharing more with you.
Yes, I would love to talk more with you too.
But thank you so much. Mwah! Thank you, Annette.
Thank you, Sophia.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.